Retro Mondays.
Hey, what's happening, gamers, and welcome to another episode of Retro Mondays. How was that, buddy? Did I get the impression right?
Well, when I retire, I know who I'm calling. Well, today's classic game is...
You are dead!
Close, Magneto, but the game is actually called...
X-Men, X-Men, it's the day, X-Men, X-Men.
Anyway, X-Men the Arcade Game released in 1992 and was developed by Konami. Joining me today is a close friend of mine from my Game Nights radio days, the Peanut Butter Gamer. I have to say, man, why the Peanut Butter Gamer?
Well, I wish I could tell you that, but it's a secret, I'm afraid.
Alrighty, I can live with that. Actually, I asked you to do some homework for this episode because the game is loosely based on the Uncanny X-Men comics, but for the most part, the whole game mirrors the failed TV pilot Pride of the X-Men, which was done by the same people that animated G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I saw that they gave Wolverine an Aussie accent. I gotta say, that's pretty funny.
If you can! Don't worry about us, Dingo. We'll make sure we can!
Before K-Wing introduced me to this game, I'd never played it. Personally, I'm just not that into comics.
Me either, though I got into X-Men and Spider-Man because of the Fox Kids cartoon shows. I was already a big Batman fan, though, but that has no relation. I'm still very surprised you never played this game. The 4 cabinets were popular in arcades and pretty much everywhere, like Chuck E. Cheese and movie theaters throughout the early 90s. The game was actually much better than Konami's last arcade game, Turtles in Time.
Well, I don't know about that. The SNES version of Turtles in Time, along with the Final Fight series, are some of my favorite beat-em-up games, but X-Men is definitely fun, and I know you like that kind of stuff.
Well, you can't go wrong with mindless button-mashing fun. But to clear this up, after the incident with Lost Vikings, that, by the way, Austin, still haunts me to this day, Turtles in Time in the arcades was pretty good, but the definitive version of the game is the Super Nintendo one. It is bar none the best TMNT game to date, but that's a review for another day.
But back to the X-Men. The game's plot involves Magneto leading an army of Sentinels to attack New York City, so Professor Xavier sends the X-Men into action.
Yeah, these games aren't really known for their plot, basic 90s game.
Since this review covers November's 2010 PSN and Xbox Live releases, Konami has made some minor changes.
Though with the Marvel license tied up, not much could be done to enhance the visuals you see, except for a few little tweaks here and there.
So what you're saying is this game could have ended up on WiiWare.
Possibly if Nintendo gave that service some more memory. Players can choose between the traditional 4-player mode with the standard screen and of course the 6-player with widescreen.
X-Men can be played solo, with friends locally, or with 4 to 6 players online. I know you didn't get the chance to play online that much, but the experience wasn't too bad.
That's actually good to hear. Lag would ruin this game's fast-paced nature. Okay, so X-Men features 2 versions of this game, the US and Japanese. Gameplay is pretty basic Arcade 101 though. Players could move the X-Men left to right or up and down, which adds a 3-dimensional feel to the game. Each hero has a standard attack, can jump, and use a special move. Now, the mutant powers pack a punch, but for US gamers, it would actually drain your health with each use, which I hated.
Whereas in the Japanese version of the game, your character's mutant power doesn't affect your health until it's gone. Gamers can use between 6 X-Men: Dazzler, Colossus, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Storm, and Wolverine. The basic premise of this game is to fight wave after wave of enemies until you face a boss at the end of the stage. Options for this game consist of increasing the difficulty and a stage select.
So, buddy, what didn't you like about this game?
Basically, my biggest complaint is that it isn't Final Fight.
True.
I mean, it's a simple game and it does what it sets out to do, so I can't complain too much, but I don't know, I suppose I could try to think of something.
Try? There is no try. There is do or do not.
I see what you did there. I guess I'll just do the latter then and let you take care of it. How's that?
Fine, I guess I'll play bad cop then. Well, it's up to me, folks, so let's get this thing rolling. Did you notice how all the enemies remain the same with the exception to a few? I mean, all the Sentinels just changed their color for the entire game. No additional moves, and there's just more of them for you to break. Likewise, those gun-toting punks seem to be exact robot copies of the rock soldiers from the Turtles arcade game. I know you might disagree with me on this, but I don't like the fact that the voiceovers are redone and they still botch the lines again. I mean, it's been 20 years, they can't get the lines right. I know it's only 2 voice actors this time around as opposed to the cast from the cartoon pilot, but I just don't understand why they would do that. I mean, they're great imitators, by the way.
Personally, I figured they were just trying to stick to the same feeling as the original.
Yeah, even so, one can only hear somebody say Wendigo so many times in the game. Although, I'm calling it right now, Wendigo is definitely the first Pokemon, because all he can say is Wendigo. Okay, time to take the kids' gloves off, folks.
Holding back on us, eh, Luke?
Always. So, listen, one of the things I really can't stand about this game to this day is the fact that my mutant power drains my health. I mean, seriously, what's up with that? I mean, I really can't understand why they included this. It's not like the game could be ported to the Super Nintendo or anything like that, so pumping in quarters was the only way to play this game back in the day. It doesn't really necessarily apply now because there's unlimited continues and yada yada yada. But when playing this game in the arcades, all I could remember aside from the cheesy one-liners is the frustration over the bad mutant draining ability.
Well, now that that's over with, I say we jump into the good aspects of the game. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more.
I like how the game has a real comic book feel to it. Everything from the enemies to the background almost feels like it jumped right off a page. Even the little things like the characters' names popping above their heads when you respawn really adds to the overall atmosphere of the game.
That is an excellent observation, man. I would say that the environments are geared more toward the pilot cartoon than the comic books. I really liked how the artist paid extra attention to all the detail, the backgrounds, character sprites, everything. It looked like a living cartoon. That was pretty cool for its day. Moving on though, one of the things I can still remember about what made this game so great was definitely its music. It just had that superhero vibe mixed with that 90s arcade feel, and it just really worked so well.
You may not notice since the sound effects tend to overshadow the music, especially when you're playing with 6 players and everyone's throwing their mutant powers all at once, but the music in the game is actually very nice. All the songs in the game really complement their individual levels, like the tribal type song called Dance with the Crocodile in the Savage Land, for example.
Now the score for this game was actually handled by some pretty famous video game composers of their day. While I won't butcher their names with my awfully bad mutant pronunciation ability, here they are! I will say this though, some of these composers went on to projects like Final Fantasy X and of course the Secret of Mana series. Hey man, why not tell us about the gameplay and some of the experiences you had with this game?
Well, first of all, I really liked that you could play with 6 players at a time. I'd never played a beat-em-up that allowed you to play with more than 4 at a time, much less on a console. I also really enjoyed all the individual mutant powers that the characters had. And I believe you had more to say about that, K-Wing?
Indeed I do. I like how all the mutant powers serve a different purpose in this game. For instance, Colossus only affects a small area with his attack, whereas Storm uses a tornado to cause some serious damage on screen. But while I won't go into detail about all the X-Men's abilities, Nightcrawler's teleport has to be the best hands down, because he can take out just about any enemy with this power. Wolverine was pretty useful too, and a cut above the rest. When I was little though, I remember getting stuck playing as either Dazzler or Colossus in the arcades, because the big kids always got first dibs on Nightcrawler, Cyclops, and Wolverine. Still, after 20 years, I can remember popping in quarters with my dad in the mall's arcade, and most of all, who could forget Magneto's epic line?
X-Men, welcome to die!
And with that, Austin, do you think that this game has lasting appeal?
Well, if I'm gonna be completely honest here, I'm just not a big X-Men fan, and I personally feel that there are some better beat-em-up games out there. But at the same time, I can really see why someone who does love the X-Men would get a kick out of it. It's definitely a solid beat-em-up title, and there's a lot here for fans to enjoy.
Exactly. While this game isn't really the best arcade game or even beat-em-up, it took steps in the right direction and made up for many of the bad X-Men games that came before it. Personally, I think this game is worth owning even for non-nostalgic reasons. The arcade simplicity is there, it's got a lot of fun factor to boot, but the game is very short, so you need to keep that in mind. Online play is okay, but I feel that people use their powers excessively, that and die on purpose since there's no penalty for it, and then just come back and spam their ability for points. Still, the best way to enjoy this game is like the arcade days of old, playing this game with friends right next to you.
I completely agree with you on one point for sure. I can see how this game would be more enjoyable if you're playing with friends in real life. In fact, that's why I have such a fond memory of beat-em-up games from my youth in the first place. My brother and I used to play these kinds of games all the time when we were little, and my online experience just didn't quite live up to the way we used to play. If you're an X-Men and a beat-em-up fan, I can definitely recommend this game to you, but if you're not an X-Men fan, I'd say go for any of the Final Fight games on the Wii Virtual Console. Just keep in mind that those are only 2-player and not 4 to 6 like this game. So, can I go home now? Or, wait, I guess I am home already. So how do you usually end these videos exactly?
Like this. Bottom line, X-Men the Arcade Game by Konami is definitely worth buying. The game is currently available on the PSN, Xbox Live, Droid, iPad, and other magical devices. Austin, it was great having you co-host Retro Mondays with me today on July 4th.
You got it, buddy. Thanks for having me. And for all the American gamers out there, hope you have a great 4th of July. And if you're not from America, well, just have a great Monday. Because if I recall correctly, this show makes Monday a fun day. Right, Kiwi?
I knew I forgot to say something this episode. Next time on Retro Mondays, we continue X-Men month with X-Men 2: The Clone Wars for the Sega Genesis. Well, folks, be sure to check out the Peanut Butter Gamer and subscribe. He has some of the best top 10s on the net, and that's no lie. Alrighty, reminder, check out my band's album on iTunes in the description below, and please sign Operation Rainfall's petition to localize 3 games for your Nintendo Wii. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Retro Mondays. Until we meet again, gamers, God bless, and happy gaming.